I think Nights into Dreams is a game which needs no introduction. If you are a dedicated Sega Saturn owner, chances are you owned or at least played this game. Although it never reached the sales and popularity as games such as Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot in 1996, the game remains to this day as one of the greatest cult classics of all time and is seen by some people to be the greatest Sega game ever made. In February of 2008, a couple of months after the launch of its long-awaited sequel Journey of Dreams, Sega released a PS2 remake of Nights. Now, with the series' huge cult following, you would think that this game would get a release in territories outside of Japan, right? Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, as the game was only released in Japan. After about 2 years of dreaming of the game reaching British shores and being emotionally disappointed, I decided to finally import the remake and modify my PS2 Slim to play it. It's a real shame to think that very few fans outside of Japan got to play this PS2 version, because if you're a fan of the original game, this, my friends, is a PS2 title I highly recommend you pick up. But is it worth owning over the original Saturn title? Well, let's find out. This is my review. I have to say, it was quite a surreal experience getting this game in the mail. This was a game I thought I would never be able to hold in my hand, let alone play. If you were a fan of the original game, then you'll pretty much know what to expect, but to those new to this game, I'll give you an easy rundown. The story of Nights into Dreams revolves around two children, Elliot Edwards and Clara Sinclair. Both these characters go through different incidents, causing them to have nightmares replaying the events. Elliot from facing embarrassment after losing to a rival basketball team, and Clara from suffering stage fright at her singing audition. During their nightmares, both accidentally stumble upon the world of dreams known as NiGHTopia. There they meet the game's title character, Nights, and together team up to free NiGHTopia from the ruler of nightmares, Wise Man the Wicked, as well as to find their inner strength, which comes in the form of 5 multicoloured orbs called Idia. It's not the most complex or indeed original plot out there, but I think it fits the game for what it is. The story is charming, the FMVs are always a joy to watch, and the lack of dialogue can actually help bring a tear to one's eye in some places. Depending on the sort of person you are, of course. As for the actual game itself, Nights is made up of 7 levels, and when you start each level you take control as either Elliot or Clarice. Before playing as the Nights character himself, it's possible to roam around the environment to collect blue chips and other items to achieve a higher score, as well as interact with some of the AI inhabitants. But aside from that, the primary gameplay takes place as a Nights once the player enters the palace at the centre of each environment. As Nights, the goal in each level is to collect 20 blue chips and use them to free each of the 4 captured Idia, which are taken away from the player as soon as you begin controlling either one of the children, with the exception of the red Idia, which represents courage. Once an Idia is freed, it is to be returned to the Idia Palace, where the next area of the level will be unlocked. Each area of a level is under a 2-minute time limit. With this in mind, a player can decide to just simply collect 20 blue chips, free the Idia and move on to the next area, or they could continue playing in the area with the Idia free to collect more blue chips and other items to boost their score before they have no choice but to return to the Idia Palace. This adds a bit of depth to the gameplay, as from time to time you'll have to make a quick decision under the time you've got left. Do you continue playing through an area to boost your score a little more, or do you just return to the Idia Palace and move on? While flying, Nights has many moves at his disposal. Pressing either the X or circle button will make Nights execute a drill dash, which helps you to speed up, attack enemies and break your way through obstacles. The drill dash is limited, however, as a meter will gradually go down with use. To replenish this meter, the player is required to fly through a series of rings which are scattered throughout the level. Nights also has a number of aerial tricks that the player can perform by pressing the L and R buttons. During certain parts of a level, this feature is fully implemented if the player happens to fly through a special ring which ties a ribbon onto Nights. Here the player has around 10 seconds or so to perform as many tricks as they can to earn a series of bonus points. But aside from that, the tricks themselves don't really serve much purpose. But then again, they don't have to, since the tricks look cool and are fun to pull off. One other useful move that Nights has at your disposal is the Power Loop. Performing this move allows the player to suck up nearby items and defeat enemies if they're within the loop's range. Plus, it can also come in handy to collect items which aren't on the 2D plane you're currently occupying. Once all 4 Idia have been returned to the palace, a boss battle with one of 6 creatures called Nightmarins begins. These bosses are very well designed for the most part, but beginners may have difficulty at first figuring out how exactly to defeat some of them. But once you know how, they can be beaten quite easily without too much difficulty. One thing that was quite unique about NiGHTS back in the day was its use of various perspectives. The game itself can mostly be described as a 2.5D game where the environments are rendered in 3D while the main gameplay takes place on a 2D plane. However, in some portions of the game you also get to play from an on-rails 3D perspective as well as an overhead bird's eye view. These perspectives will shift on the fly, so at one point you might be playing the game from the default 2D plane and then suddenly you'll be playing from an overhead view. This concept of perspective shifting would later be implemented again by Sonic Team in 2008's Sonic Unleashed. And of course, outside of the main gameplay, you get to take control of either Elliot or Claris with full 360-degree movement. While most of us know that the Saturn wasn't really the console to show off the best in terms of graphics in the late 90s, NiGHTS was and still is a truly breathtaking game to look at. Environments are varied, character models have a lot of work put into them, and the art design is unlike anything you may come across in a game. The controls are also something NiGHTS pulled off incredibly well. They do take some getting used to, but once you get it, you'll be in control of one of the smoothest games I've ever known. One final praise I'd like to point out from NiGHTS Into Dreams is its soundtrack. To put it briefly, it's one of my favourite gaming soundtracks of all time. And that's hard to say because there's a lot of games out there that could earn the same praise from me, but this soundtrack is definitely in my top 10, if not top 5. Now it's time, I think, to talk about the features that the PS2 version offers. I mean, it is a remake after all, isn't it? One feature that the PS2 version offers is the ability to play the game with brand new remastered graphics, or with the original Sega Saturn visuals. This, I have to say, was a really good idea on Sega's part. It gives fans a chance to play their favourite game with new visuals as well as to go back and play the game that they grew up with. It also allows new players who never got to experience the original to do so and appreciate both versions. In terms of emulation, I don't think Sega could have done it any better than they could on the PS2. All the game's physics are in there and the controls are as good as they ever were. Not only that, but the remastered graphics are gorgeous. They pretty much took everything that was good looking in the original and made it 10 times better. In fact, I wouldn't be too surprised if this was how the undeveloped Dreamcast sequel was intended to look like. As for the Sega Saturn mode, I really have nothing to say. It's virtually a perfect emulation of the original game. It even includes the infamous cuffs mistake, something which was ironically fixed in the remake mode. Unfortunately, as good as a job Sega did giving us a near perfect port with both the original and updated visuals, the emulation quality is not as great when it comes to the audio. While the music still sounds as crisp and clear as it ever was, these sound effects do not. Just take a listen here and you might see what I'm talking about. Now, it doesn't hurt the game too much, as the audio quality could indeed have been much worse. It just doesn't sound as crisp in comparison to the original Saturn title, and even the Sega Saturn graphics mode suffers from this problem. Other features included in this PS2 remake include a photo gallery, which includes all the promotional artwork produced for the game, a movie theatre which allows you to watch the game's FMVs, the option to play the game in 16:9 widescreen, a Nightmare and Selection menu, a status menu for the Nightopian A-Life you've hatched, a sound test, and the original game's expansion, Christmas Nights, which is unlocked once you've beaten the game as both Elliot and Claris. While the removal of the extras featured from the original version of this expansion is a disappointment, the PS2 remake more than makes up for this by keeping in the classic internal clock feature, so depending on what time of the year you play, you'll be able to unlock features like the ability to play as NiGHTS' rival Reala on April Fools, different seasonal themed outfits of the characters, and so on. All in all, the extra features found in the PS2 remake of NiGHTS are enough to keep you coming back for more, despite the main game's unfortunately short length. In conclusion, if you're someone who's always wanted to play NiGHTS but never really owned a Sega Saturn to do so, the PS2 remake is an excellent alternative, providing you have the right equipment to play it, of course. As for hardcore fans of the original, I still recommend that you give this version a look. It's one of the best remakes I've played in a while, and it includes an adequate amount of fan service to make it worth your time and money. As for the rating, I give the PS2 remake of NiGHTS Into Dreams a perfect score of 10 out of 10. And here's hoping that the game will be re-released to the fans on the downloadable gaming market very soon. Well, that's it for this review, everyone. So, until we meet again, this is Sonic94 saying goodnight, goodbye, and God bless.